So, unlike many of the books of this period, Mrs. Aldrich does an unusual thing. She makes the main character in the book a woman. And so that is one reason she is appreciated by many women's literature professors across the nation. But in the story, there's a young girl whose name is Abby. And Abby wants to be a musician. She wants to be an artist. And that's all fine and good, but something terrible happens to her. She falls in love with a farmer, and he wants to move to Nebraska. And his name is Will, and he tells her, "Don't worry about your things, Abby. We're going to make sure that you get to do those. But the most important thing first is to get our land." And so the journey begins. They come to Nebraska, and once they're settled here, the book is really about the sacrifice of the woman. Because in the story, there's one little segment that we'll refer to today. They've had drought, and they've had grasshoppers and dust storms and blizzards, and life's been pretty miserable this past year. But Abby says to Will, in spite of those things, I want to make sure that our children know Christmas as a joyous season. And so they decide, make it that way. And so in the room, you'll notice some things that were gifts that they made for the children. For example, there are corn husk dolls that they made out of husk. They went to the creek and they got a sapling and they cut it up and made checkers out of it, like to go along with the checkerboard. They made a large rocking horse out of lumber and tree stumps. And at this point, Abby gives her paints to one of her daughters. Now, she always wanted to be a musician, and then the family had received a missionary barrel from her family in Iowa, and there was enough money in it to buy an organ. But it's not Abby who gets the lessons, it's one of the daughters. There's a horn in the barrel, and they give that to one of her sons. And you think, is Abby going to get anything? But we finally see that she's going to get this pink hat. Well, when it comes time the night before Christmas to bring the cedar tree in, Abby had cut apples and dried them so they look like little butterflies on the tree. And the next morning when the children get up, they're so excited to see the butterflies and especially take note of their little pink antenna. So it's really about the sacrifice because she even cuts up her hat for the children having a wonderful Christmas. In the bottom of the barrel were 2 hoop skirts, and she laughs about that because that definitely would be an Iowa thing. You don't need those on the prairie. But they won't waste them. They'll use them for their love apples. In other words, they're going to become tomato cages.